In our headlines on this Monday, February 3rd, here in South Korea. Starting tomorrow, that is Tuesday, February 4th, a 25% tariff goes into effect against Canada and Mexico, and an additional 10% tariff against China, as pledged by U.S. President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Constitutional Court here postpones to next Monday its verdict on a case that may determine whether its final ruling on the impeachment trial against President Yoon Suk-yeol involves its current 8 justices or a full bench of 9 justices. And on the local economic front, Korea's industrial output rose higher in 2024, gaining 1.7% on year amid greater chip demand. But the country's retail sales fell for the 3rd year in a row, losing 2.2% to note its deepest decline in 21 years. We start over in the U.S., where President Donald Trump has shared support for the adage, no pain, no gain, as he brushes aside mounting concerns over domestic inflation amid rampant tariffs targeting America's major trade partners. Our Lee Jae-yong reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday imposed a 25% tariff on goods from Canada and Mexico, while China was hit with an additional 10% tariff on the various existing duty rates. The tariffs are expected to be met with retaliatory measures from the affected countries and are also expected to lead to higher inflation. Economists also predict that the ensuing trade war will likely slow U.S. growth. However, Trump says while the Americans may feel the economic pain from his tariffs, it would be worth the price in order to secure U.S. interests. Taking to his social media platform Truth Social on Sunday, he said the tariffs will make America great again, and it will all be worth the price that must be paid. Meanwhile, in a separate post, the U.S. president reiterated his call for Canada to become a U.S. state. He claimed that the U.S. pays hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize Canada, adding that Canada would cease to exist as a viable country without the subsidy. With this, he called on Canada to become a cherished 51st state, promising that such a move would lead to lower taxes, better military protection, and no tariffs. The cryptocurrency market responded negatively to the news of Trump's tariffs against Canada, Mexico, and China over the weekend. According to U.S.-based exchange Coinbase, as of 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time, the price of Bitcoin stood at just over $97,200 US. The price of the largest cryptocurrency by market cap hovered above $100,000 US before the tariffs went into effect on Saturday. According to cryptocurrency media outlet CoinDesk, the renewed trade war could aggravate inflation in the U.S. and make it difficult for the U.S. Fed to cut interest rates. It added that the weakness in the Bitcoin price reflects such concerns, sending a signal to the market to avoid risky assets. On the other hand, spot gold price surpassed $2,800 US per ounce on Friday, with investors opting to buy safer assets. Lee Jae-yong, Arirang News.
Now, as expected, the 3 countries, Canada, Mexico and China, that are facing the first set of Trump tariffs, have vowed to retaliate. Our An Sung-jin covers their response.
Following the imposition of tariffs by the U.S., China stated that it would challenge Trump's move.
The unilateral imposition of tariffs by the U.S. seriously violates World Trade Organization rules, which is not conducive to solving its own problems, but disrupts normal China-U.S. economic and trade cooperation.
In a written statement from the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, China expressed strong discontent and added that not only will it file a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization, but it will take other countermeasures to safeguard its rights and interests. Though nothing has been specifically stated, some of its retaliation measures may be hardening export controls on rare earth metals or targeting U.S. companies with interests in China. There's also speculation that China may impose a 10% tariff on U.S. imports after Tuesday, when Trump's new sanctions will be put in place. Mexico and Canada have also vowed immediate retaliatory measures against the U.S. for tariffs imposed on both countries. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Saturday posted on X that she has informed her economy minister to implement what she called Plan B, which includes tariff and non-tariff measures in defense of Mexico's interests.
This measure of 25% tariffs has effects for both countries, but it has very serious effects for the economy of the United States, as it is going to greatly increase the costs of all products that are exported from Mexico to the United States.
Canada responded with a 25% tariff on American goods, including beer and wine, starting Tuesday, while Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also urged Canadians to restrict travel to the U.S. and to boycott U.S. products, adding that Americans will feel pain from Trump's tariffs.
This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people.
A spokesman for the European Commission said the EU regrets U.S. tariffs against neighboring countries and China and vowed to respond strongly to unfair levies leveled against the bloc. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And here in South Korea, the local bourse responded sharply to news of Trump tariffs on U.S. trade partners. The benchmark Kospi surrendered 2.5% to close Monday's session at 2,453, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq sank 3.3% to settle at 703. The Korean won also weakened against the U.S. dollar, with the exchange rate ending at 1,467 won against the greenback. In other news, will the Constitutional Court's final ruling with regard to President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial include 8 or 9 justices? Now, that is a question as the court next week shares its verdict on a related matter. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
The Constitutional Court has postponed its verdict on whether acting President Choi Sang-mok should have appointed a third judge to fill the court bench's remaining seat, a crucial ruling as the bench deliberates on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial. On Monday, the 8-member bench was set to convene at 2 p.m. to issue a ruling on a competence dispute filed by National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik against the acting president's decision to appoint only 2 out of 3 candidates recommended by the Assembly. Lawyer Kim Jong-un also filed a complaint, arguing that Choi's appointment was unconstitutional. However, the court announced it would hold a hearing on the competence dispute 1 week later on February 10th, while indefinitely postponing a ruling on Kim's petition. Under pressure from both ends of the political spectrum, Choi in late December chose to instate 2 candidates, one recommended by the ruling party and one by the opposition party. But he omitted left-leaning Judge Ma Eun-hyuk, saying there should be a bipartisan agreement on the third candidate. The Assembly's resolution to appoint the judges was forced through by the majority-holding opposition party, which recommended 2 progressive candidates. The Speaker, who comes from the opposition party, claims Choi has disregarded the Parliament's decision by only partially enacting the resolution. The ruling People Power Party, however, called for the case to be scrapped and says the Speaker's competence dispute bypassed a formal vote at the National Assembly.
The court's composition is a particularly sensitive issue as it comes amid President Yoon's trial, which requires a 2/3 majority vote or 6 justices to uphold his impeachment.
The ruling party and Yoon supporters have raised concerns about the political orientation of the bench, which is already deemed to have 4 left-leaning judges. Experts say the court has likely postponed the decision as Ma's appointment would mean that the bench's verdict on Yoon's impeachment could look politically driven, giving rise to further controversy.
In the impeachment trial of former President Park Geun-hye, the ruling was unanimous, 8-0, including even conservative justices. This led the public to accept the decision as a legal judgment rather than a political one. However, if President Yoon's impeachment results in a split decision, such as a 5-4, it could be seen as purely political. If the justices' votes align perfectly along political lines, the public may lose trust in the court's impartiality.
At the same time, if the court finds Choi Sang-mok's partial appointment unconstitutional, there would be significant pressure on the acting president to appoint Ma Eun-hyuk as the 9th justice to the bench. Press officer Chun Jae-yeon said Monday that while the court's verdict would not be mandatory, ignoring it would amount to a violation of the constitution and the law. As the decision is not legally binding, observers say it is likely Chair would sustain the 8-member bench until a compromise is reached between the ruling and opposition parties. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And staying on the political front, President Yoon Suk-yeol now faces an impeachment trial and a criminal prosecution on charges of rebellion. For more on this, I have our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon standing by live. Do-yeon, welcome. First then, I hear top officials of the ruling People Power Party, Do-yeon, were there at the Seoul Detention Center to meet with the president.
That's right, Sunny. The leadership of the People Power Party, specifically the interim chair Kwon Young-se, floor leader Kwon Sung-dong, and a senior lawmaker Na Kyung-won visited here earlier in the day. Now, this is the first time the leadership paid their visits to the Seoul Detention Center for President Yoon. The visit lasted about 30 minutes, and President Yoon had a message for the party. Take a listen.
He urged our party to unite and play a role in giving hope to the people, including the younger generation in their 20s and 30s. He also expressed concerns about the current international situation and the global economy, particularly regarding South Korea's future.
The lawmaker also shared that Yoon repeated the reasons behind his declaration of martial law, that the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea had put the government in paralysis using its supermajority. The meeting comes after the floor leader announced yesterday that this was a personal visit to show a support for an old friend and not a political move.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Toon, what's on the schedule for the president's impeachment trial this week?
Now, Sonny, as you said, he's facing 2 trials simultaneously. One for the impeachment motion at the Constitutional Court, and the other is the criminal court case for his charges of insurrection due to his declaration of martial law. As for President Yoon's schedule this week, he's set to appear at the Constitutional Court twice this week, on Tuesday and Thursday. Key military personnel will take the witness stands, and they can testify to Yoon's specific orders during the declaration and the execution of the martial law that night. They include Lee Jae-yong, former Chief of Defense, Counterintelligence Command, and others. NIS Chief Jo Tae-yong and National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik have also been asked to appear at the witness stand by request of the Yoon's legal team. Now, this is not the only trial Yoon is facing. Obviously, the criminal trial has also begun, and this means he could be appearing at 2 different courts 3 times a week. And because of this, Yoon's legal team requested the Constitutional Court to stop the review of his impeachment motion, as there is a criminal case going on for the same reason, his declaration of martial law. According to Article 51 of the Constitutional Court Act, this is a possibility. Meanwhile, the legal team is also looking at requesting bail for President Yoon to have him released during the trials.
Beyond the Seoul Detention Center, and I also understand there was another attempt by police authorities to access the top office. Do tell us more.
Sonny, that's right. Yet again, the police are trying to gain access inside Yongsan Presidential Office, where Presidential Security Services Office is located. But as we've seen during the multiple attempts in the past, they have not been granted access inside. On the other hand, they did make progress somewhere else. They actually raided the homes of 2 key PSS officials for alleged obstruction of official duties during the police and CIO's execution of the arrest warrant for President Yoon. From what we know, the officials' homes were raided, and their phones, including personal and secure phones, were confiscated. That's all for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, and thank you for the latest regarding the impeachment trial and the criminal prosecution faced by the president. Findings for the year 2024 show Korea's industrial output remained sturdy, but the country's retail sales lost substantial ground. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun covers the latest data.
South Korea's industrial production saw a rise in 2024, largely driven by a recovery in semiconductor exports. However, domestic consumption indicators remained sluggish, highlighting a growing disparity between sectors. According to data from Statistics Korea on Monday, the country's overall industrial production index showed a 1.7% year-on-year increase. This growth outpaced the 1% increase recorded in 2023 and comes due to a strong performance in the manufacturing sector. Manufacturing output rose by 4.4%, a turnaround from the 2.6% decline recorded in 2023. Semiconductors and pharmaceutical production played a key role with a surge in exports, but domestic manufacturing shipments fell by 2%, underscoring weak domestic demand. The service sector saw slower growth, seeing the lowest since the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 due to a downturn in retail and wholesale trade and hospitality services. Retail sales dropped by 2.2%, which is the sharpest annual decline since 2003. This also marks 3 straight years of contraction in retail sales, the longest streak of decline since data collection began. Sales fell across all 3 categories measured: durable goods such as automobiles, non-durable goods such as food, and semi-durable goods such as clothing. A spokesperson from the agency said that the impact of the political turmoil and the Jeju Air plane crash in December on these numbers is yet unclear.
Declines in industries like food and services, lodging, arts, sports, and leisure may have been influenced by the political climate and national mourning period in December. That said, it's difficult to isolate the exact impact of these factors from the numbers.
Construction activity, particularly in building projects, also recorded the biggest drop since 2001 last year, with a decline in completed construction work. Capital investment, however, grew by 4.1%, driven by increased spending on semiconductor manufacturing equipment and transportation equipment. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong has had his acquittal upheld by an appeals court with regard to allegations of unfairly merging Cheil Industries and Samsung C&T. In 2015, Lee was accused of orchestrating the merger to secure control over Samsung Electronics, as Samsung C&T was a major shareholder of the company. He attended the ruling at the Seoul High Court earlier today, as the judges ruled that he was not guilty of a wide array of allegations ranging from illegal trading to market manipulation to breach of duty. Last year, a lower court cleared him of all charges, ruling that the merger appeared driven by business needs. The South Korean Navy this past weekend showcased its newest destroyer in a training session for the first time, and this show of might was covered by a group of journalists, including our Kim Bo-kyung. Do take a look.
Sailing in the waters of the East Sea, the newest Aegis destroyer Jeongjo the Great detects a simulated North Korean submarine launching on SLBM from waters of Hamgyeongbuk-do province.
대장, 대공, 항색경보 발령. 총원, 전투 배치.
With a display in the Combat Command Center showing the missile's flight trajectory, the intercept missile was fired, hitting the SLBM in less than 10 minutes from the point of detection.
3, 2, 1, 마크 인디아.
This was part of the ballistic missile defense exercise that took place over the weekend, conducted aboard the 170-meter-long, 21-meter-wide destroyer. The warship is capable of not only detecting and tracking ballistic missiles, but also intercepting them, as it is equipped with the ship-based surface-to-air missile system, SM-6, and possibly SM-3 as well.
Showcasing Jeongjo the Great Aegis destroyer mobilized and in training for the first time is to mark the establishment of the newly formed Task Fleet Command. This 8,200-ton advanced destroyer will be command's key asset.
Newly launched on Saturday, the command will be based at the Jeju Naval Base and will operate multiple destroyers under the Rear Admiral's command, including not just Jeongjo the Great destroyer, but also 7,600-ton Taejong the Great class Aegis destroyers. And of course, Jeongjo the Great will be at the unit's core of the maritime three-axis system against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats.
Jeongjo the Great maintains the highest combat readiness through rigorous training to counter any possible maritime provocations. It is fully prepared to respond decisively and forcefully, regardless of when, where, and what circumstance.
김보경, Arirang News.
On the international front, Israeli defense forces have killed at least 50 Palestinian militants in the occupied West Bank over the past 2 weeks. Now, Israel claims 23 buildings were destroyed earlier on Sunday in Jenin to thwart the building of, quote, a terrorist infrastructure. Meanwhile, a Palestinian news agency asserts Israel has been targeting a refugee camp in Jenin, destroying multiple homes and leading to casualties. The latest assault comes just days after a ceasefire went into effect in Gaza. Over in Los Angeles this past Sunday, the 67th Grammy Awards took place to celebrate exceptional talent in the music industry. Beyoncé, the most awarded artist in Grammy history, won her first ever Album of the Year for Cowboy Carter, which also won the Best Country Album. Kendrick Lamar also had garnered much applause by sweeping 2 of the Big 4 categories, winning Record of the Year and Song of the Year for his rap track Not Like Us. And Chappelle Roan was named Best New Artist.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the Middle East, the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt reopened on Saturday local time after being closed for nearly 9 months. This reopening aims to facilitate the evacuation of Palestinians, including children who require urgent medical treatment. The development is part of a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, aiming to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It signals that negotiations on the possible extension of the current ceasefire are gaining traction. The World Health Organization estimated just before the current ceasefire that approximately 12,000 patients require medical evacuation, including those with war injuries and chronic conditions. A group of 50 sick and wounded Palestinian children were the first to be allowed through the crossing on Saturday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of bombing a boarding school in Sudza, located in the area of Russia's Kursk region that has been under Kyiv's control for 5 months. Civilians were sheltering there and preparing for evacuation when the attack on Saturday occurred. Ukraine's armed forces reported that 4 people were killed, dozens were injured, and 84 people have been rescued or received medical treatment. However, the Russian Defense Ministry says the Ukrainian forces launched the deadly missile strike from Ukraine's Sumy region. These conflicting accounts have not yet been independently verified. Lima, the capital city of Peru, hosted the 3rd annual Pamplonada Rimense, a bullfighting festival featuring Peruvian matadors. The event on Sunday local time gives participants a taste of the bullfighting of Spain's Pamplona and celebrates traditional bullfighting culture in Peru. It was held in Lima's historic Plaza de Toros de Acho. The venue has 259 years of history since it opened in 1766 and has hosted some of the greatest bullfighting figures of all time. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
On the very first Monday of February, an untimely cold wave has come around. As a strong cold wave moves south from the north, cold wave advisories and warnings are in place all over the country. Even in the middle of the day today, temperatures remain below 0 degrees Celsius in the Seoul metropolitan area. In addition, starting with the Jeollado provinces, snow will spread to the west coast of Chungcheongnam-do province tonight. Heavy snow up to 25 centimeters is expected in Jeollabuk-do province, and up to 15 centimeters is also predicted on the west coast of Chungcheongnam-do province and the rest of the southwest. Most of the snowfall will continue until Thursday and until the weekend in the southwest and on Jeju Island. Tomorrow, Seoul will be as cold as minus 13 degrees in the morning. Gwangju and Busan at minus 6 degrees. Daily highs will only move up to minus 5 degrees in Seoul. Daejeon will reach minus 3 degrees. This cold wave will remain throughout this week That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.
How to survive in Korea. Cafes. Step 1. Find a seat. Before ordering, find a seat. Laptop, ID, smartphone, jacket, whatever that can mark your territory. But no bites. It's a little too big. Step 2. Pick up. We do not ask or call your name. We call out, B69번 고객님. The buzzer will vibrate when your order is ready at the counter. Wait, got your straw? Keep the top of the wrapper on. Doing this is more hygienic. Step 3. Cafe etiquette. If you need to use your laptop, find a seat next to a socket. No extra charge for using electricity. But if you're staying over 3 hours, how about ordering another drink or dessert? Step 4. Last bite standing. There's a mysterious custom in Korea. The last bite standing. When there's about 1 bite left of that cake, nobody will go for it. You might be tempted, but don't be hasty. Right before you get up, take the last piece, saying that you simply can't waste food, or just leave it. It will save a few calories. Did you survive at the cafe? Did someone behind the counter catch your eye? Go for the same drink every single day.
오늘도 아이스 말차 라떼 드실 거죠?
You might make an impression.
I have friends who are really cool, and I want to keep them to myself.
Let me introduce you to them, and only you. I'm sure you guys will hit it right off.
It's gonna be amazing, and time will totally fly.
Chill with K-pop idol groups only on After School Club.
In the After School Club,
we all fam.
Korea today accused the newly inaugurated Trump administration of hostility, taking issue with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's reference to the regime as a, quote, rogue state during a recent media interview. All this amid much speculation of another summit between the U.S. and North Korea. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Monday, February 3rd. For those of you celebrating the Lunar New Year, hope your festivities last week were good. Now we start this work week with a look at prospects of possible engagement between the US and North Korea amid the return of the Trump administration to the White House. For this, I have Chun So-ram with US government-funded broadcaster Radio Free Asia here in the studio. So-ram, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Célia Ferretti with French daily Le Croix. Célia, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Right, Sora, we'll start with you. North Korea's delegate to the UN office in Geneva has reaffirmed his regime's dedication to nuclear weapons. Let's begin with his remarks and their relevance.
Jo Chol-soo, North Korea's delegate to the UN office at Geneva, made it clear once again that Pyongyang has no intention of giving up its nuclear weapons. And he blamed the US for escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula. Jo described North Korea as a responsible nuclear weapon state during a UN conference on disarmament. His comment came in response to criticism from UN member states over Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs. He targeted the US, saying US political and military provocations are the root cause of triggering armed conflicts and undermining regional security. It's important to note that the remarks came shortly after Trump referred North Korea as a nuclear power. His reference has raised the speculation about the possible shift of the U.S. policy towards North Korea, whether or not Washington is going to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. However, many believe that Washington will stick to its long-standing policy of complete denuclearization. If the U.S. were to take that step, if U.S. is going to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, it's going to bring serious results, and including strong backlash from allies like South Korea and Japan.
Right, indeed. And before we delve further into that, Célia, after the remarks by the North Korean delegate to the UN in Geneva, the regime tested a cruise missile system. Do tell us more about this particular test and its broader implications.
Indeed, North Korea said it tested a cruise missile system, its third known weapons display this year, and vowed the toughest response to what it called the escalation of US and South Korean military drills targeting the North. North Korea views US military training with South Korea as an invasion rehearsal, though Washington and Seoul have disproved this claim, repeatedly saying their drills are defensive in nature. In recent years, the US and South Korea have expanded their military exercise in response to North Korea's advancing military program. The launch of this cruise missile suggests North Korea will maintain its run of weapon tests and a confrontational stance against the US. And for now, even though President Trump expressed his desire to meet Kim Jong-un, we don't see any change of behavior for the North Korea. This test also comes after the last declaration of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in December during a 5-day plenary meeting, the Workers' Party, the ruling party in North Korea. Kim Jong-un called the US the most reactionary state that regards anti-communism as its invariable state policy. KCNA, the North Korean state media, didn't elaborate on the anti-US strategy that was explained at this plenary meeting, but it said that Kim Jong-un set forth tasks for its military to boost its capabilities and also its technology advancements, and also to bolster the morale of the North Korean military. Overall, this first missile test is the first one since Trump came to the White House in January. And for a while, the regime didn't really answer or comment on what Trump said about North Korea, but it did this morning calling U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's comments claiming that North Korea is a rogue state. The regime answered by calling it a grave provocation.
Right, indeed. And quite a number of media here in South Korea called that North Korea's first condemnation of the newly inaugurated Trump administration. So, the tough rhetoric and the cruise missile test was then followed by an actual visit to a nuclear weapons facility by Kim Jong-un. What appears to be the purpose of these latest tough words and actions by North Korea, do you think?
Kim Jong-un visited nuclear production sites and emphasized the importance of increasing nuclear capabilities. Kim's latest actions and remarks came just 6 days after Trump mentioned the possibility of dialogue with Kim Jong-un. So this suggests that for now, North Korea is focused on strengthening its nuclear power rather than engaging in negotiations. A few days after Trump referred to North Korea as a nuclear power, the White House National Security Council reaffirmed that the U.S. remains committed to the complete denuclearization policy towards North Korea. So this came after North Korea's cruise missile test and Kim Jong-un's nuclear facility visits. So Kim's nuclear site visits may signal that North Korea wants to strengthen its nuclear capabilities to gain leverage in potential negotiation with the U.S. in the future. Also, the recent missile test and the visit appear to be a measured provocation, expressing dissatisfaction with U.S.-South Korea joint military drill. Although White House reaffirmed the complete denuclearization policy towards North Korea, it's clear that Trump is open to the dialogue with North Korea since he mentioned Kim Jong-un many times in the past weeks. So while the U.S. has stated its willingness to talk to North Korea, Pyongyang has yet to respond. So we will have to wait and see how the situation unfolds.
Right, and staying with what Soram has just said, Silu, during an interview with Fox News that aired, I believe, on January 24th, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke about reaching out to North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Pundits claim that if a summit does indeed take place between these two individuals, Mr. Trump, of course, and Kim Jong-un, the talks this time around will be very tough. What exactly do they mean, and what are your thoughts?
Indeed, so U.S. President Donald Trump said he would reach out to North Korea, Kim Jong-un, raising the possibility of a new start of their bromance diplomacy, as many people called it 5 years ago. Recently, Trump referred to Kim Jong-un as a smart guy and someone he can get along with. He seems to have the same mindset as he had back in 2018. During his first term, Trump met Kim 3 times, even though their country are technically still at war to one another. But his friendly relation back then was not enough to make any deal happen, and after 3 meetings, the diplomacy came to a bitter end. Even if Trump wants to start the dialogue again, there are no signs that Kim Jong-un would actually be interested. It's unclear whether or how Kim Jong-un, emboldened by also his stronger alliance with Russia now and his own country military advance he made in the past 5 years, will respond to this overture of Trump. Since Trump last met Kim Jong-un 5 years ago, North Korea missile program changed a lot, and the country situation changed a lot. And while in 2018 Kim Jong-un offered some concession on his nuclear arsenal, now maybe he would ask for a bigger price for the U.S. to give up on some of his weapon. Also, after this failure of negotiation in Hanoi and Singapore, Kim Jong-un vowed to not engage anymore with Washington and has doubled down on building even more greater capabilities, military capabilities. So despite Trump's flattering comments about Kim all throughout his campaign or his first few days in the White House, it's unclear whether the North Korean leader would actually respond to it. Following the collapse of the round of meetings that we had in 2018, now Kim Jong-un has a new friend, a new ally in Vladimir Putin. He sent 12,000 troops in Ukraine to help Russia's invasions, also sending weapons and munition to Putin. So maybe he's not looking to make any deal with the West anymore. So I'm guessing we'll have to see once Trump is more settled down in the White House in the coming months, what will be his policy towards the North and what Kim Jong-un's answer will be at the time.
Right. Well, in the meantime, Soram, last Friday, I believe, American magazine The National Interest shared the thoughts of two North Korean defectors about the possible demands that may be made by Mr. Trump and Kim Jong-un in the event of another summit. Could you tell us a bit more about the potential demands and their prospects?
So actually, RFA did an interview with one of the defectors featured in the magazine, and he also shared his thoughts on what Trump and Kim could ask for another summit. So Lee Jae-yong, the defector, he was the high-ranking official when he was in North Korea. He suggested three potential demands. First is the return of USS Pueblo, and the second is dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities, and the third one is the economic cooperation at the Wonsan-Galma coastal tourist zone. So the USS Pueblo is a U.S. Navy ship that North Korea seized in international waters back in 1968. North Korea has long been used the ship for anti-American propaganda. So its return could signal that Kim Jong-un is seriously considering improving its relationship with the U.S., and at the same time, the return also might signify a major political victory for Trump. And second point is the dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities. Yongbyon is central to North Korea's nuclear program, so its complete destruction would be a big win for the U.S. in terms of denuclearization policy. But for North Korea, this could be seen as a significant loss. Finally, the economic cooperation at the Wonsan-Galma coastal tourist zone. Recently, Trump mentioned that North Korea has tremendous condo capabilities. Kim has been developing this project over 10 years, and it's scheduled to open in June. So economic cooperation in this area could be a less risky way for both sides to begin conversation. On these three options, the dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities seems to be a little bit too bold move for North Korea, because there are a lot of losses for North Korea. However, economic cooperation in Wonsan-Galma might be a good starting point for a small deal. It could be an ideal first step toward broader negotiations.
Right, the first step then. Celia, as Sora mentioned earlier, Mr. Trump, he referred to North Korea as a nuclear power, which triggered quite a lot of concern about a potential shift in U.S. policy with regard to North Korea. What do you suppose are the prospects of North Korea being recognized as a nuclear weapons state? I mean, how would France, which is one of the 5 formally recognized states possessing nuclear weapons, respond?
Indeed, there's some tension between the allies, between South Korea and the US. Denuclearization of North Korea is a prerequisite for global stability, as South Korea reminded Tuesday after the US President Donald Trump described the regime as a nuclear power, as we said, raising concern that the US could be moving towards recognizing North Korea as a nuclear state. Trump's defense secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth, also called North Korea a nuclear power during his state confirmation hearing last week. While it's unclear what Trump and Hegseth meant actually by this phrase, US officials have for a long time avoided this phrase that could signal a recognition of North Korea as a nuclear armed state, and the diplomatic and geopolitical consequences of this could be quite important. There is a growing debate as to whether the international community has to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. It's true that they have the weapon, or at least they are testing them, but recognizing it could really shift the balance in the geopolitical order in the region. For example, if France has nuclear weapons since the 60s and is still attached to a non-proliferation treaty, thus recognizing North Korea as a nuclear armed state would really be counterproductive for the global stability, not only in Asia, but also in the world, because that would mean if a country decides to develop its nuclear arsenal illegally and hold on to it long enough to finally be recognized, then other countries like Iran, for example, could say now my nuclear program is justified because North Korea has it and has been recognized by other countries. So it's a really slippery slope and dangerous path to recognize a country that developed its nuclear arsenal illegally as a nuclear state as any other country in the world.
Right. So beyond the Korean peninsula, there have been quite a number of media reports about the absence of North Korean soldiers from the front lines in the battle between Ukraine and Russia. What more can you tell us?
As you mentioned, a lot of media reports suggest that North Korean troops have been absent from the front line in battle for weeks, possibly due to heavy casualties. According to the Ukrainian official, North Korean troops have not been seen at the front lines for about 3 weeks, unless in the Kursk region, where Ukrainian special forces are operating. The official suggested that North Korean units likely suffered from severe casualties. The New York Times also reported that North Korean forces have been missing from Kursk region for 2 weeks, citing Ukrainian and U.S. officials. According to the Ukrainian officials, again, about 11 to 12,000 of North Korean troops have been sent to Russia, and just 3 months after, 1/3 of them have been lost. While Ukrainian forces admitted that North Korean troops fought fiercely, they struggled to coordinate with Russian forces. And even though North Korean soldiers were believed to be elite special forces, they were mainly used as foot soldiers in the open battlegrounds, where they were exposed to drone attacks. And Ukrainian officials said North Korean troops lacked training on how to counter drone attacks, which contributed to their heavy casualties. Neither Pyongyang nor Moscow have officially admitted the presence of North Korean troops in Russia, and both remain silent on their reported absence from the battleground recently.
Right, indeed. Meanwhile, Celia, last Friday, Mr. Trump, he claimed that he and Russian leader Vladimir Putin may soon take, and I quote, significant action to ending the violence in Ukraine. What precisely did he say, and what endgame do you envision?
Yeah, President Trump said on Friday his administration has already had a very serious discussion with Vladimir Putin about the war in Ukraine, and that he and Russian President Vladimir Putin could take significant action towards putting an end to this grinding conflict. Trump has said repeatedly during his campaign that he would have not allowed the war to happen in the first place if he had been in office, of course. And even though he was president as the fighting grew actually in 2016 after Russia annexed Crimea. So Trump, since returning to office, has criticized Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, saying that he should have made a deal with Putin before to avoid the conflict. In a recent interview on the Russian state television, Putin also praised Trump, saying he was a clever and a pragmatic man who is focused on U.S. interests. So it seems that both Trump and Putin get along together. It was already the case in Trump's first term. But also we can see, as Trump is criticizing Vladimir Zelensky, that Trump has really picked a side in this conflict. Now, the peace talks, honestly, I don't see exactly how that can work out in the long run. While Ukraine doesn't have the initiative in the conflict anymore, it's still not overrun and still inflicting quite a lot of casualties to Russia, and also make them pay the high price for their economy overall. And to Russia, a peace agreement proposed could be that Russia would keep the ground they gained during the war in exchange for maybe a lift of economic sanction, and also maybe a promise that Putin will not be aggressive for the, I don't know, 10 next year or 30 next years. But that would just sound like a ceasefire, not really a peace talk a long-lasting peace that everybody can agree on, especially not Putin, because for him it's not just about Ukraine, it's about Europe, in this whole geopolitical interest in Europe. the conflict doesn't end in Kiev. And also, it's hard to see how Volodymyr Zelensky would actually accept to give part of his land after this war of aggression that Putin led. So is it impossible to happen? No, maybe they couldn't work out a peace treaty. And for now, a ceasefire would be in both Ukraine and Russia's best interest. But building a long-lasting peace, I'm not sure if Trump can really make it with a botched deal.
Right, I see. Well, it's still an ongoing problem, so we'll see in the months ahead then. All right, Celia, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And Soram, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow.
News for and by MZers. News Generation.